Heard you blew up the boardroom? Congrats, second-hand girl. You just buried your career. Harper gave him a faint smile but said nothing. She opened the contract again, rereading clause 17.4.b. I'm not wrong, she told herself. But as she looked out the window at the glowing city, she couldn't help but wonder, would the truth be enough to save her from the storm ahead? Chapter 3. Troublemaker or Brave Soul? Harper Lewis sat at her tiny desk beside the photocopier, eyes glued to her computer screen, though her mind was miles away. 2 days had passed since the fateful meeting on the 50th floor, and she still hadn't been called into HR to be formally fired. That, in a strange way, was even more terrifying. Every footstep in the hallway made her jump, half expecting Elaine to appear and deliver the final blow to her short-lived career at Halden Corp. What was I thinking? She muttered, tapping her fingers nervously on the desk. Interrupting the head of legal in front of the CEO. I've probably broken the stupidity record for the year. Her co-workers weren't helping her nerves. Greg, the Starbucks guy, had already spread the story of the reckless intern across the 42nd floor. Every time he passed her desk, he smirked. Still breathing, second-hand girl? I'm betting your badge gets revoked by Friday. Harper only gave him a tired smile, but inside she was counting down the hours. She needed this job not just to pay rent, but to afford her mother's medication for chronic arthritis. Meanwhile, on the 50th floor, Nolan Halden sat in an office as grand as a penthouse, skimming the report in front of him, but he wasn't really reading. His mind was occupied by one name, Harper Lewis. The girl in the worn-out suit who had stood up in a boardroom full of executives and called Clause 17.4b a trap, arrogant, insubordinate, or just right? Nolan didn't like surprises. He'd built Halden Corp from a startup into a financial empire by controlling everything numbers, deals, people. But Harper Lewis was a variable he hadn't accounted for. James, Nolan said in a low voice. His assistant appeared almost instantly, tablet in hand. Find out everything about Harper Lewis, intern legal department. I want a full report. James raised an eyebrow but didn't question it. Yes, sir. When do you need it? By tomorrow morning, Nolan replied, eyes still fixed on the window. He didn't say it aloud, but deep down he was intrigued. Who was this girl bold enough to challenge his entire system? The next morning, James laid a slim folder on Nolan's desk. Harper Lewis, age 24. Graduated from a public law school on a full scholarship. Won 3 national debate championships. Served as a student representative on the university board. No social media presence. No scandals. Volunteers at an education center for underprivileged kids and... He paused, voice softening. She's caring for her sick mother. Chronic arthritis. They live in a rental apartment in the slums. Nolan flipped through the file, pausing at a photo of Harper at a debate competition standing on stage. Eyes sharp, pointing with conviction like she was trying to persuade the world. He felt a jolt of energy course through him. It wasn't her beauty, though. Her bright brown eyes and defiant smile were hard to ignore. It was her presence. That rare sense of principle in a world full of agendas. Anything else? Nolan asked, voice calm but his eyes sharper now. James cleared his throat. She turned down an offer from a major law firm because they represented a corporation accused of fraud. She said, James glanced at the document, and I quote, I won't work for liars. This was in a school paper interview. Nolan laughed, an uncharacteristically warm sound that made James blink. She really said that? Yes, sir, James replied, trying not to smile. Nolan closed the file and leaned back in his chair. Harper Lewis wasn't just smart. She had integrity, something he hadn't seen in years, buried under billion-dollar deals and calculated handshakes. He recalled her eyes in that boardroom unflinching, even when the whole room turned against her. She's a troublemaker, he thought, or the only one brave enough to speak the truth. While Nolan was becoming entangled in the enigma of Harper, she was fighting a very real anxiety on the 42nd floor. Elaine called her into her office, eyes stern behind gold-rimmed glasses. Lewis, she said, voice cold. You know what kind of mess you caused in that meeting, don't you? Harper swallowed, standing tall. Ma'am, I only meant to point out a potential risk in the contract. I believe that clause could be dangerous for the company. Elaine sighed, rubbing her temple. Do you have any idea how long the legal team worked on that deal? You embarrassed Mr. Voss in front of the board. Worse, you made me look like I've lost control of my team. I'm sorry, ma'am, Harper said quietly, yet firmly. But if I'd stayed silent and something went wrong, I couldn't live with myself. Elaine looked at her eyes softening just a bit. You've got guts, I'll give you that. But guts don't pay bills. If the CEO decides to let you go, I can't protect you. Harper nodded, heart heavy. She left Elaine's office, head spinning. She thought of her mother, of the expensive medication, of her dream to be an honest lawyer. Maybe I went too far, she thought, but I don't regret it. That afternoon, Harper received a short email from HR. Ms. Lewis, please report to the CEO's office at 9 a.m. tomorrow. No explanation, no details. She reread it again and again, her heart racing. Nolan Halden wants to see me. The man with the ice-cold stare, the man who could end her future with a flick of his wrist. She sat down at her desk, staring out the window. The city still glittered, but this time, the lights didn't bring hope. Welcome to your last day, Harper Lewis, she murmured, forcing a weak smile. But inside, a spark still flickered. If this was her last stand at Halden Corp, she wouldn't bow her head. On the 50th floor, Nolan sipped his coffee, looking down at the city. He thought about the meeting tomorrow with Harper. He didn't know what he wanted: punish her for her defiance or thank her for her courage. But one thing was clear. Harper Lewis was unforgettable. And for the first time in years, something stirred in his chest, a strange, unfamiliar thrum of life. Chapter 4. The CEO's Personal Interrogation. Harper Lewis stood before the gleaming wooden door to Nolan Halden's office, her heart pounding like it wanted to escape her chest. She'd mentally prepared for every possible scenario: being fired, being berated, or worse, being sued for unparalleled arrogance. Her second-hand suit was still tight in the shoulders, and she debated whether to apologize up front or just silently accept her fate. But when she knocked and heard his cold, commanding voice, "Come in," she knew there was no turning back. Nolan's office was the size of a small soccer field, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city. He sat behind a massive wooden desk, black suit perfectly tailored, eyes sharp as blades. In front of him sat a cup of black coffee and a file Harper recognized instantly, her background file. Great, she thought. He's investigated me. This isn't a conversation, it's a sentencing. Sit, Nolan ordered, pointing to the leather chair across from him. Harper sat, keeping her spine straight, even though she wanted to curl up. She glanced around, no assistant, no HR rep, just her and the most powerful CEO in the city. Ms. Lewis, Nolan began, his voice calm but heavy like an oncoming storm. Do you make a habit of interrupting heads of legal during key meetings? Or was that just a spontaneous hobby? Harper swallowed hard, but her gaze didn't waver. Sir, I didn't interrupt for fun. I did it because Clause 17.4b could cost Halden Corp its intellectual property. I assumed you'd prefer truth over a room full of nodding heads. Nolan raised an eyebrow, a subtle move that felt like she'd just taken a misstep on a chessboard. Truth? He echoed, voice tinged with sarcasm. You, an intern with less than 3 days of experience, believe you know more than a legal team that worked on this for 3 months? Harper clenched her fists under the table, but smiled a polite, slightly defiant smile. Sir, I'm not saying the legal team is incompetent. I'm saying they missed a trap, and if I saw it and stayed silent, I wouldn't deserve to be in that room. Nolan tilted his head, something flickering in his gaze. Curiosity or annoyance. You're very confident, he said, or very foolish. You do realize embarrassing Mr. Voss in front of the board has consequences? I could fire you right now. Then why haven't you? Harper blurted and instantly regretted it. God, Harper, did you just say that out loud? Silence. Nolan stared at her, unblinking, as if analyzing a flawed contract. Then suddenly he laughed, a low, short sound that stunned Harper. She hadn't imagined Nolan Halden could laugh. For a moment he looked almost human. You've got guts, Lewis, he said, the smile vanishing as quickly as it appeared. But guts won't save you if you're wrong. Explain. Clause 17.4b. If you can't convince me, you'll be out of Halden Corp before noon. Harper took a deep breath, the old feeling of standing on a debate stage washing over her. She opened her folder and flipped to page 132. This clause grants Zenith exclusive rights to core patents for 5 years, but there's a line that allows it to be extended indefinitely based on undefined technical conditions. If Zenith exploits that, they could hold on to the patents forever. Holden Corp would lose the most valuable asset of the merger. Nolan glanced at the page, but his eyes never left her face. You're sure? That's a serious accusation. Absolutely, Harper replied, voice steady. I've reviewed it 4 times. If you'd like, I can write up a detailed analysis. But I'm betting you already had doubts about this clause too, didn't you? Nolan's body stiffened, his expression darkening. Are you implying I knowingly overlooked a trap? Harper flinched, too far. No, sir, I just meant, you're sharp. If I caught it, I believe you might have suspected something too. Nolan tapped his fingers on the desk, each tap like a war drum. You're good at flattery, he said, voice laced with irony. But don't play psychology with me, Lewis. I'm not your law school debate opponent. Harper flushed but didn't back down. I'm not playing games. I just don't want Holden Corp to get blindsided. If that cost me my job, then at least I tried. Nolan stared at her so long she felt time itself pause. Finally, he stood and walked to the window, his back to her. You've put me in a difficult position, Lewis, he said quietly. If I keep you, legal will revolt. If I fire you, I admit you were wrong, and I'm not sure you are. Harper pressed her lips together, keeping her voice even. You can review the clause yourself. If I'm wrong, you can fire me later. Nolan turned, his gaze sharp but tinged with something else. You're a headache, he said, but his tone had softened. Fine. You have 48 hours to submit a detailed analysis of this clause. If it's convincing, you stay. If not, you know the drill. Harper nodded, heart lifting a little. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me, Nolan cut in, settling back into his chair. And next time you decide to blow up a boardroom, at least wear a suit that fits. Harper blinked, then laughed before she could stop herself. I'll note that, sir, but second-hand suits get the job done. Nolan raised an eyebrow, and this time, a hint of a smile tugged at his lips, a brief flicker, but enough to leave Harper stunned. Out, before I change my mind. Harper left the office, light on her feet. She wasn't fired, not yet, but as she returned to the 42nd floor, she realized something else. Nolan Holden wasn't just terrifying, he was interesting. And though she wouldn't admit it out loud, part of her was already looking forward to their next battle. Chapter 5. The Reluctant Ally. Harper Lewis sat at her tiny desk beside the photocopier, eyes burning from 2 sleepless nights spent writing the analysis of Clause 17.4b. She'd submitted the report to Nolan Holden right on time, mentally including an imaginary cup of coffee to soften the notoriously cold CEO. But this morning, when she opened her email, one message nearly made her spill her water. Ms. Lewis, report to the CEO's office at 8 a.m. Do not be late. What now? Harper muttered, checking her watch. 7:45. She grabbed her folder, adjusted her second-hand suit, and sprinted to the elevator. Greg, the Starbucks guy, passed by with a smirk. Off to see the big boss again. You really do love digging your own grave. Harper shot him a glare, but wasn't sure herself was she walking into a promotion or a disaster. On the 50th floor, Nolan Holden's office was just as cold and luxurious as last time. He sat behind his desk, gray suit and immaculate, eyes scanning Harper's analysis. When she entered, he didn't look up, just gestured for her to sit. Harper swallowed hard, trying to ignore the tension in the air. Sir, she began, if this is about the report, You were right, Nolan cut in, his voice low and sharp. He slid the analysis across the desk. Clause 17.4b is a trap. Zenith's legal team planted it. If you hadn't spoken up, Holden Corp could have lost hundreds of millions. Harper blinked, stunned. So, I'm not getting fired? Nolan raised an eyebrow, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Don't celebrate yet. You've given me more headaches than help. Before Harper could respond, the door burst open. Elaine Carter stepped in, followed by Richard Voss, head of legal, face flushed red. Mr. Holden, Voss began, voice shaky. We've just identified another issue in the Zenith contract, the technology transfer clause. It's vague. If we sign, we could be sued. Nolan drummed his fingers on the desk, each tap a blow to someone's career. Vague, he repeated, voice like ice. Voss, how does your team miss 2 loopholes in one contract? Voss wiped sweat from his brow, flustered. Elaine cleared her throat and glanced at Harper. Sir, Ms. Lewis has proven capable of spotting issues. Perhaps she could assist in reviewing the rest of the contract. Harper's mouth fell open, but Nolan spoke first. Lewis? An intern? He turned to her, eyes filled with both skepticism and something else. Do you think you're up for it, Lewis? Harper clenched her fists under the table, heart pounding. This was either a golden opportunity or a trap. Sir, she said firmly, I can't promise perfection, but I can promise honesty. If something's wrong, I'll find it.